Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun!
A gentle whir filled the air, a steady companion to the rhythmic task of restoring books to their rightful places within the library's embrace. Sunlight bathed the interior in its warm glow, casting long shadows and dust-filled rays across the well-trodden floor. At the circulation desk, a delicate hand fidgeted with the curved frame of its eyeglasses, its focus momentarily diverted from the digital realm before it. A voice, calm and measured, interrupted the serene atmosphere. "I'd be grateful if you could help me with these." The librarian, immersed in the digital catalog, offered a welcoming smile as they turned to their inquiry. An older woman, her silver hair a testament to a life well lived, patiently awaited assistance with a stack of mystery novels. Their interaction was a harmonious dance, honed over countless encounters, instantly recognizable as a long-standing ritual of the Oak Ridge Library. To the patrons, the soft-spoken person behind the desk was simply Marcel Thompson, the reliable head librarian who could find any book in the stacks and recommend the perfect read based on the vaguest descriptions. What none of them knew was the restlessness that stirred beneath Marcel's carefully maintained exterior. The brown corduroy pants and cream-colored button-down shirt he wore felt like a costume, something donned each morning with increasing difficulty. After Mrs. Winters departed with her books, Marcel's fingers unconsciously touched the small pendant hidden beneath his collar. A tiny silver crescent moon, the only outward indication of the truth that had been growing more insistent with each passing day. Later that evening, after locking up the library, Marcel drove home to his modest one-bedroom apartment. The space was neat and orderly, bookshelves lining every wall, plants nestled in corners catching the last rays of sunlight. It was a sanctuary, the only place where the facade could slip, if only slightly. Opening his laptop, Marcel hesitated before typing into the search bar, fingers hovering over the keys. The same search he'd performed dozens of times before, each time promising himself it would be the last. Tonight was different. Tonight, the promise wasn't to stop searching, but to finally act. The package arrived 3 days later, innocuously brown and unmarked. Marcel's heart raced as he carried it inside, setting it on the kitchen table as if it might detonate. For nearly an hour, it remained untouched while he prepared dinner, ate, washed dishes, all the while stealing glances at the cardboard rectangle that represented something monumental. Finally, with trembling hands, he opened the package. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper, lay a black satin long-line girdle. The material felt cool and smooth between his fingers as he lifted it from the box, examining the structured panels and delicate fasteners. In the bathroom, Marcel undressed slowly, avoiding his reflection in the mirror until the moment of truth. The girdle slid over his hips with some effort, the compression firm, but not uncomfortable. When he finally looked up, the transformation wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, a slight reshaping that nonetheless sent a surge of recognition through his entire body. This was right. This was true. The following morning, Marcel dressed for work as usual, but underneath the brown corduroy pants was the black satin girdle. Each step felt different, each movement imbued with a secret awareness that both thrilled and centered him. For the first time in years, the disconnect between inner truth and outer presentation had narrowed, if only by degrees. Throughout the day, the sensation of the girdle against his skin served as a constant reminder. This wasn't just about clothing or appearance. This was about identity, about honoring a truth that had been patiently waiting to be acknowledged. Marcel wasn't Marcel at all. That evening, sitting at his small writing desk, a blank document open on the laptop screen, words were typed that had never before been written. "My name is Lauren." 3 simple words that contained an entire universe of meaning. Speaking them aloud sent a shiver of recognition through her body. Lauren. The name felt right, like returning to a home she'd never physically visited, but had always carried within. The following weeks became a careful dance of private authenticity and public presentation. Lauren, still presenting as Marcel at work, began researching, reading everything she could find about transition. Medical information, personal accounts, legal procedures. She absorbed it all with the methodical thoroughness that had made her an excellent librarian. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, during her lunch break, Lauren made a phone call from her car. "I'd like to schedule an appointment with Dr. Reeves," she said, voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "It's regarding
gender transition consultation."
The words hung in the air, suddenly real in a way they hadn't been before. The receptionist's matter-of-fact response, scheduling an appointment for the following month, was both anticlimactic and profound. This was happening. After years of quiet questioning, Lauren was taking definitive steps toward becoming herself. The clinical environment of Dr. Reeves's office should have been intimidating, but Lauren found comfort in the professionalism, the medical charts, the straightforward questions. Here, her identity wasn't something to hide or justify. It was simply a fact to be addressed.
"Many patients describe a moment of clarity,"
Dr. Reeves said, reviewing Lauren's intake forms.
"Was there something specific that helped you recognize your gender identity?"
Lauren thought of the black satin girdle, still worn beneath her clothes. "There wasn't one dramatic moment," she answered. "More like 1,000 quiet ones that finally became too loud to ignore. But there was an item of clothing that made things undeniable. When I wore it, I knew." Dr. Reeves nodded, her expression understanding.
"That's quite common. Sometimes the external helps confirm the internal."
They discussed options: hormone therapy, legal name change, the gradual process of social transition. By the time Lauren left the office, she carried a folder of information, referrals, and a prescription that represented the first medical step of her journey. The library had always been Lauren's sanctuary, but now it felt increasingly like a stage where she performed an outdated role. Each Sir and Mr. Thompson from patrons stung slightly, though she maintained her professional demeanor. In quiet moments between shelving books and helping visitors, Lauren researched wardrobe options on her phone, saving images of muted floral print dresses and sensible low heels, clothes that spoke to who she truly was rather than who she had pretended to be. 2 months into hormone therapy, subtle changes began to manifest. Skin softened, body hair thinned, and emotional responses shifted in ways both challenging and validating. Lauren documented these changes in a journal, creating a record of her metamorphosis. On a crisp morning, Lauren stood before her closet, fingertips brushing past the Marcel clothes, the corduroy pants, the button-downs, the muted ties, to touch a lavender blouse recently purchased online. Today wasn't a work day. Today could be different. The blouse paired with black slacks wasn't a dramatic departure from her usual attire, but it felt revolutionary as she stepped outside her apartment, heart racing with each step toward the local coffee shop. The brown hair she'd been growing out was now long enough to style in a way that softened her features, and subtle makeup techniques learned from countless online tutorials completed the presentation. At the counter, the barista smiled. "What can I get for you, ma'am?" The simple honorific sent a wave of validation through Lauren's entire body. "A chai latte, please," she replied, voice practiced in a slightly higher register that felt natural after weeks of vocal exercises. Waiting for her drink, Lauren noticed she wasn't attracting any particular attention. No one was staring or whispering. She was simply a woman in a coffee shop, unremarkable in the most remarkable way. This small success emboldened Lauren to expand her authentic presentation beyond brief excursions. She purchased more clothing, modest dresses in subtle patterns, cardigans in soft materials, shoes with low heels that accommodated her frame while providing stability. Each item carefully chosen to reflect the woman she had always been. The question of work loomed large. The library had been her professional home for over a decade, and while county employment policies technically protected her from discrimination, theory and practice could be very different things. After much consideration, Lauren scheduled a meeting with Diane, the library system director. "You wanted to see me, Marcel?" Diane asked, closing her office door. Lauren smoothed her hands over her brown corduroy pants, worn today with a more feminine blouse, and took a deep breath. "Yes, though that's actually related to what I need to discuss with you." She paused, gathering courage. "I'm transgender, Diane. I've begun the process of transition, and I would like to be known as Lauren at work." Diane's expression shifted from surprise to thoughtful consideration. "I see. Thank you for trusting me with this. What can I do to support you through this process?" The response was so straightforward, so devoid of judgment, that Lauren felt tears threatening. She blinked them back, maintaining her composure. "I'd appreciate an email to the staff explaining the change and requesting that they use my correct name and female pronouns."
I'm planning to begin presenting fully as female at work starting next month, if that's acceptable.
Diane nodded, making notes.
Of course. We'll need to update your nameplate, email, and identification badges. Is your legal name change in process?
The conversation continued in this practical vein, addressing logistical concerns rather than questioning Lauren's identity. By the meeting's end, a plan was in place for Lauren's workplace transition, a plan that respected both her needs and the functioning of the library. The staff email went out the following week, briefly explaining that their colleague would now be known as Lauren Thompson and requesting appropriate pronoun use. Lauren braced herself for negative reactions, but the responses ranged from supportive messages to matter-of-fact acknowledgments. A few colleagues seemed uncomfortable, but remained professional. Her first day as Lauren at work arrived with both anticipation and anxiety. She chose a navy blue dress with a subtle floral pattern, paired with a cream cardigan and sensible brown flats. Her growing brown hair was styled simply, framing her face in a way that felt right. The makeup was understated, just enough to enhance her features without drawing undue attention. Standing before the mirror that morning, Lauren barely recognized the person she'd pretended to be for so many years. Here, at last, was her true self, not perfect, not without the markers of having lived decades presenting as male, but authentically Lauren. The library's front desk felt different that day, though nothing had physically changed except the nameplate that now read Lauren Thompson, head librarian. Some patrons did double takes, a few asked hesitant questions, but most simply carried on with their library business. "Miss Thompson, could you help me find this book? The computer says it's available, but I can't locate it." The regular patron, Mr. Finch, handed Lauren a slip of paper, treating her exactly as he always had, with polite respect and the expectation of professional assistance. "Certainly, Mr. Finch. That would be in our new historical fiction section. I'll show you." As they walked between the stacks, Lauren realized that the many fears that had kept her from being herself for so long, rejection, ridicule, loss of respect, while not unfounded, had perhaps been overstated. There would be difficult moments, certainly, but there would also be ordinary ones like this: helping a patron find a book, answering reference questions, ordering supplies for the children's story hour. The transition wasn't without challenges. Public restrooms became a source of anxiety. Administrative hurdles with insurance and identification created frustration and occasional misgendering, sometimes accidental, sometimes seemingly deliberate, stung each time it occurred. One afternoon, Lauren was reorganizing the reference section when she overheard two patrons speaking in what they clearly thought were hushed voices.
"That's the librarian I was telling you about,"
one whispered.
"Used to be a man. Can you believe it? They're letting anyone work with children these days."
Lauren's hands stilled on the book she was shelving, the words hitting like physical blows. She considered confronting them, considered hiding in the break room, considered a dozen responses in the span of seconds. Instead, she simply turned and approached them with professional composure. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. If you have concerns about my qualifications or professionalism, I'd be happy to address them directly. Otherwise, I'll remind you that the library has a policy of respect for all patrons and staff." The women flushed with embarrassment, one muttering an apology while the other gathered her belongings and left. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but Lauren refused to be diminished by their ignorance. As months passed, Lauren's body continued to change under the influence of hormone therapy. The sharp angles softened, her brown hair grew longer and fuller, and the distribution of weight shifted in subtle but significant ways. Each change was celebrated in her journal, each milestone marked with quiet satisfaction. The black satin girdle that had been so instrumental in her awakening was eventually replaced with garments better suited to her changing body, but Lauren kept it in a special box in her closet, a tangible reminder of the moment she had finally allowed herself to be. On the 1-year anniversary of beginning her transition, Lauren treated herself to a new dress, a forest green wrap style with a pattern of small white flowers that complemented her figure and coloring. She wore it to a dinner with the small circle of friends who had supported her throughout the journey. "To Lauren," said Rita, her closest friend and confidant, raising a glass in toast, "who had the courage to become herself." The others at the table, colleagues from the library and new friends made through support groups, joined in the celebration, each sharing a memory or observation about Lauren's journey. "I remember when you first told me," Rita continued later as they shared dessert. "You were so worried about everything that could go wrong. Are you happy with your decision?" Lauren considered the question seriously, fork pausing midway to her mouth. The past year had contained more challenges than she could have anticipated. Family members who refused to accept her, administrative battles with insurance companies, moments of dysphoria that still occasionally ambushed her. But it had also brought a sense of authenticity that permeated every aspect of her life. "Absolutely," she finally answered. "It wasn't about happiness exactly, though I am happier. It was about truth. Living as Marcel felt like reading a translation of a book originally written in another language, similar to the original but fundamentally altered. Now I'm reading the original text." Rita smiled at the librarian's metaphor. "Leave it to you to explain your gender identity through literary references." Lauren laughed, the sound natural and unforced. Her voice had settled into its new register through practice and therapy, another aspect of herself that now aligned with her true identity. The court date for her legal name change arrived on a rainy Tuesday. Lauren chose a conservative navy blue dress with a matching blazer for the occasion, her growing brown hair pinned back in a simple style. The proceedings were brief and straightforward, a judge reviewing paperwork, asking a few standard questions, and then signing the order that officially recognized her as Lauren Elizabeth Thompson. Walking out of the courthouse, official documents in hand, Lauren paused under the columned portico. Rain pattered against the stone steps, creating rivulets that raced toward the street. She had entered the building carrying the last official vestiges of Marcel. She exited as legally, unequivocally, Lauren. The weight of the moment settled around her shoulders like a comfortable shawl. This wasn't the end of her journey. There would always be aspects of transition to navigate, but it represented a significant milestone, a public and legal affirmation of what she had always known privately. With her legal name established, other changes followed. Updated driver's license, social security records, professional certifications, and banking information. Each change simplified daily interactions that had previously required explanations or exposed discrepancies between her presentation and identification. The library continued to be Lauren's professional home, her role expanding as she developed programs specifically designed to make the space more inclusive. A diverse books initiative highlighted stories featuring a wide range of experiences, and the community response was overwhelmingly positive.
Miss Lauren,
called 8-year-old May, a regular at the children's reading hour.
I brought my new book to show you. It has a character just like my friend who has 2 moms.
Lauren smiled, kneeling to examine the colorful picture book.
That's wonderful, May. It's important for everyone to see themselves in stories, isn't it?
The child nodded enthusiastically before running off to join the other children gathering for that day's reading. Watching her go, Lauren felt a profound sense of purpose. Her journey wasn't just personal. It created space for others to be seen and accepted as well. As her second year of transition progressed, Lauren found herself settling into a comfortable rhythm. The novelty of living authentically had given way to the ordinary business of simply living. She paid bills, attended staff meetings, went grocery shopping, called her mother on Sundays, all as herself. The wardrobe she had so carefully curated during early transition evolved as she became more confident in her style. The muted floral dresses remained favorites, but she expanded into deeper colors and more varied silhouettes as she learned what suited her body and personality. A forest green wrap dress became a staple for professional events, while a burgundy A-line skirt paired with various blouses offered versatility for everyday wear. Dating remained complicated. Lauren had decided early in her transition to focus on herself rather than relationships, but as she grew more comfortable in her identity, she cautiously began considering romantic connections again.
Have you tried any dating apps?
Rita asked over lunch one Saturday.
My cousin met her husband on one.
Lauren stirred her soup thoughtfully.
I've browsed a few, but the disclosure question is tricky. When do I tell someone I'm trans? In my profile? First date? Third date? Each option seems fraught with potential problems.
Rita nodded sympathetically.
There's no perfect answer, I guess. But you deserve someone who appreciates you for who you are. All of who you are.
The conversation shifted to other topics, but Lauren continued to reflect on the question of romantic relationships. Being seen and accepted as a woman in daily life had been essential to her well-being. Being seen and accepted as a woman worthy of love seemed like the next frontier to navigate. After much consideration, Lauren created a profile on a dating app known for its inclusive community. Her description was honest without making her transgender identity the central focus. She was, after all, a librarian with a passion for historical fiction, amateur gardening, and documentary films who also happened to be trans. The first few connections fizzled quickly.
conversations that started promisingly but faded when disclosure occurred. Lauren tried not to take it personally, understanding that everyone had their preferences and boundaries, but each rejection stung nonetheless. Then came a message from Daniel, a history professor at the local community college. Their conversation flowed naturally, moving from books to films to travel experiences. When Lauren disclosed her transgender identity after several days of engaging messages, his response was refreshingly straightforward.
"Thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate your openness. I'm still very interested in meeting for coffee, if you are."
Their first date was at a small cafe near the library, a neutral space where they could talk without too much pressure. Lauren chose a burgundy dress with a subtle pattern and a black cardigan, her growing brown hair loose around her shoulders. The outfit was feminine, without being overly formal, projecting the quiet confidence she had developed through her journey. Daniel was waiting when she arrived, rising from his seat with a warm smile. "Lauren, it's nice to meet you in person." The conversation that had flowed so easily online translated well to their in-person meeting. They discussed favorite authors, debated historical interpretations, and discovered a shared love for old bookstores and antique maps. Throughout the interaction, Daniel treated her with the same respect and interest he would show any woman, because that's exactly what she was.
"I'd like to see you again,"
he said, as they prepared to leave, 2 hours having passed with surprising speed. Lauren smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "I'd like that too." Their relationship developed slowly and thoughtfully. Daniel asked questions about her transition when appropriate, but never made it the focus of their connection. He appreciated her insights, respected her boundaries, and gradually became an important part of her life. On their 6th date, walking through the botanical gardens on a warm evening, Daniel took her hand. The gesture was simple but significant, public, affectionate, and unconcerned, with the occasional curious glances from other visitors.
"Is this okay?"
he asked, fingers gentle against hers. Lauren nodded, squeezing his hand lightly. "More than okay." As their relationship deepened, Lauren introduced Daniel to the various aspects of her life, her apartment filled with books and plants, her circle of friends, her favorite quiet spots in the city. He integrated seamlessly, contributing historical anecdotes to dinner conversations and helping reorganize her overflowing bookshelves on rainy weekends. "Have you ever shown anyone your journal?" Daniel asked one evening as they prepared dinner in Lauren's small kitchen. He was chopping vegetables while she stirred a simmering sauce, the domesticity of the scene both novel and comforting. Lauren considered the question, wooden spoon pausing mid-stir. The journal documenting her transition contained her most vulnerable thoughts, the raw emotions and private celebrations that had marked her journey. "No," she finally answered.
"It's always been just for me."
Daniel nodded, resuming his chopping.
"That makes sense. It's a sacred space."
His understanding reinforced what Lauren had come to value most about their relationship. She never had to justify or explain the significance of her experiences. Daniel simply accepted that her journey was both deeply personal and fundamentally important to who she was. 3 years into her transition, Lauren received an email that caused her breath to catch. The library system was hosting a regional conference on inclusive community spaces, and she had been asked to speak about her experiences creating programming that welcomed diverse populations. "They want me to give a keynote address," she told Daniel that evening, still processing the invitation.
"That's wonderful,"
he responded, genuine pride in his voice.
"Your work at the library has been innovative.
They're recognizing that.
Lauren bit her lip, uncertainty creeping in.
The thing is, I can't talk about inclusive programming without acknowledging my own perspective as a transgender woman. It would be disingenuous, but that means coming out to a much wider professional circle.
Daniel considered this, giving the concern the serious attention it deserved. Would that be unsafe for you? Not unsafe, exactly, but more exposed than I've been before. Most people at these regional events don't know my history. Then it comes down to whether you're ready to incorporate that aspect of your identity into your professional profile more publicly, Daniel observed. No right or wrong answer, just what feels right for you. Lauren spent several days contemplating the invitation, weighing the personal exposure against the potential impact of sharing her perspective. In the end, she accepted the speaking engagement, deciding that authenticity served both her professional integrity and the broader purpose of the conference. Preparing the keynote address became an exercise in vulnerability. Lauren crafted a presentation that drew on her experiences without making them the central focus. Her transgender identity informed her approach to inclusive programming, but didn't define the innovative work she had developed at the library. The morning of the conference, Lauren stood before her closet, considering options. The selection was now extensive, a wardrobe built thoughtfully over years rather than the hastily assembled collection of her early transition. After careful consideration, she chose the forest green wrap dress with white flowers that had become something of a signature piece for important occasions, pairing it with comfortable low heels and subtle jewelry. Her brown hair, now grown well past her shoulders, was styled in loose waves that framed her face elegantly. The person reflected in the mirror was unmistakably Lauren, confident, professional, and authentically herself. Daniel drove her to the conference center, providing moral support before taking a seat in the audience. As Lauren waited to be introduced, she experienced a moment of clarity, similar to the one she'd had years ago when first trying on the black satin girdle. This was right. This was true.
It is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Lauren Thompson, head librarian at Oak Ridge Public Library, whose innovative programming has created one of the most inclusive community spaces in our region. Walking to the podium, Lauren felt the weight of many eyes upon her. She placed her notes carefully, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the assembled librarians, administrators, and community organizers. "Thank you for that kind introduction," she began, voice steady and clear. "Before I discuss the specific programs we've developed at Oak Ridge, I'd like to share a perspective that informs my approach to inclusive spaces." Taking a deep breath, Lauren continued, "As a transgender woman, I understand personally the importance of seeing oneself reflected and respected in community institutions. My journey has taught me that libraries aren't just repositories of books. They're sanctuaries of belonging, where every person deserves to be seen, heard, and valued."
The words hung in the air for a moment before she proceeded with the substance of her presentation, detailing the practical aspects of creating truly inclusive programming. Throughout the address, Lauren maintained the professional demeanor that had earned her respect in the library community, while allowing glimpses of the personal passion that drove her work. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Questions focused on the practical aspects of her programs rather than her personal disclosure, and several attendees approached afterward to discuss implementing similar initiatives in their own libraries.
"You were magnificent,"
Daniel told her later as they celebrated over dinner, his eyes warm with admiration. Lauren smiled, a sense of peaceful accomplishment settling around her. It felt right, bringing all the parts of myself together instead of compartmentalizing. I'm a librarian who happens to be transgender.
just as I'm a librarian who happens to love historical fiction and gardening.
Integration. Daniel nodded. That's what healing looks like.
The conference marked another milestone in Lauren's journey, not the dramatic revelation of early transition, but the quiet integration of her identity into all aspects of her life. Being transgender was neither hidden nor her defining characteristic. It was simply one facet of who she was as a complete person. In the years that followed, Lauren's life continued to evolve in both ordinary and extraordinary ways. The library expanded its inclusive programming, her relationship with Daniel deepened into a committed partnership, and her confidence as a woman became so natural that the memories of living as Marcel sometimes felt like stories about someone else. On quiet evenings, Lauren occasionally opened the special box in her closet, touching the black satin long-line girdle that had been the catalyst for her journey. The garment, now unused for years, remained a tangible reminder of the moment when she had finally acknowledged her truth, when the disconnect between inner identity and outer presentation had become too painful to maintain.
"What are you thinking about?"
Daniel asked, finding her sitting on the edge of the bed, the open box beside her. Lauren carefully folded the garment and returned it to its place. Beginnings. How the most important journeys can start with the smallest steps. Daniel sat beside her, hand finding hers in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Are you happy with where the journey has taken you?" Lauren looked around the bedroom they now shared, at the photographs of their life together on the walls, at the stack of books on her nightstand, at the dress hanging on the closet door for tomorrow's library board meeting. She thought about the woman she had become, not perfect, still learning and growing, but authentic in every way that mattered. "I'm not just happy with where I've gone," she replied, squeezing his hand. "I'm happy with who I've become along the way." The black satin girdle remained in its box, a cherished artifact from the beginning of her journey. But Lauren herself had moved forward, into a life where being a woman wasn't a revelation or a statement, but simply the truth she had always known, now reflected in every aspect of her reality. In the quiet of their home, surrounded by the life they had built together, Lauren Thompson was exactly who she was meant to be, completely and authentically herself.
Thanks for watching my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!